On in the morning, Jocks. Jocks 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order on this President's Day. Yes, we are alive. We are here because we've got to break down what an exciting weekend we had in college basketball. I know one fan base here in the state of Alabama is feeling pretty good about themselves. The other one right now, there's some things they need to, things we probably need to work on. But we did get the banger and the hanger, the Barner Bammer Classic over the weekend. Alabama, Auburn. It lived up to the hype. I think that when you look at the game in its totality, I know Alabama fans, it's gonna be tough to stomach. But I do think that for everything that was going into it and everything that we wanted to see, we got it. I think we got it. And I think that for Alabama fans, there's some things you got to work on. Shooting in particular is one of them. And if you're Auburn, this is probably the best Auburn team we've really seen in basketball ever, to be honest. Even you go back to the Jabari Smith days. I say they go back. That was just a couple years ago. But collectively, what this number one ranked Auburn team looks like, this looks like not just an SEC champion, but this looks like a national championship basketball team. I think what you got from your superstar player in Janai Broome and all of the other pieces that elevated their game when they needed it the most, they showed up, they executed. Alabama just couldn't buy a shot. It never really felt like it felt like they were trying to get back into it the entire game. And then all of a sudden, Auburn would go and boom. Alabama would have a nice little run. Then boom, Auburn hits another shot. And it's like, oh boy, here we go. It became an onslaught. But I think collectively, as the whole game went on, it's hard to say that this wasn't one of the best basketball games we've seen. I know for Alabama fans, maybe not so much. But for a number one, number two, all the things that are at stake and all the hype, it ended up being a pretty doggone good ball game. Conrad, I know I know you can look at it very objectively. I know you can. But how are your thoughts just initially from the game over the weekend?
I mean, well, first off, I mean, you have to give a ton of credit to Auburn. I thought that defensively, some of the things that Auburn was able to do, they defended the three incredibly well. They made things difficult for Alabama. You have to give credit to Auburn for the way that, especially, early on in the game, coming out there and hitting those big threes early. I especially thought, when Janai Broome hit the second three there in the first couple of minutes of the game, and, that was a big moment because that was again, you got your big man hitting a step back three. When things like that happen, you just kind of have a sense, all right, this is probably going to be a pretty good day for us, and credit to Auburn because they were able to keep that going. And, I mean, it was an incredible game, like you said. It was, I think, just about everything that we had hoped it could be. I mean, it didn't come down to a final possession or anything like that, but it was a competitive game all the way through. And, Alabama came back and made it close a number of times. But for Auburn to go on the road to the airport hangar and, for the first time since Nado's been a coach there, Alabama never had a lead in a game at home. And that's never happened before. So that was really, really impressive for Auburn, again, because there were a few times where the momentum heavily shifted in Alabama's favor. I'm thinking especially, in the second half when Alabama started to hit some threes. Mark Sears hits that really, really deep three, and you start thinking, okay, all right, the shots are about to start falling for Alabama. And they really didn't after that. They got hot for a couple of minutes and then went right back to the way that it was for the majority of the game. But I mean, it was a physical game. We knew there were going to be a lot of fouls called. We can sit here, we can argue about certain things, like in particular, I'll be honest, I didn't think the foul on Chad Baker-Mazara was any,
a flagrant two at that.
Yeah, I just, that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, I understand, he swiped him in the face, but you could also make the argument that Youngblood was, shoving him out of bounds the entire time. So, there were calls like that I'm like, I guess we could say that went in Alabama's favor, and I didn't necessarily agree with it. But, I thought generally I thought the officiating was fairly solid. I mean, there's always going to be calls that you look back on and go, man, maybe they should have called that on both ends here, something along those lines. But I mean, it was a physical game. Like you could tell both of the teams out there, they wanted it. But you said something, and I thought it summed up the game pretty well for Alabama. Was it just felt like they were pressing the entire game, right? Even from the jump, when Auburn goes out and starts hitting those threes early on, you could tell Alabama, they were desperately trying to hit a three to respond and try to get some momentum going, and they just absolutely didn't have it. I mean, and you look at what Auburn had, they had 6 guys score 13 points or more. Alabama had 1, and it was Mark Sears. And, Mark Sears had his moments in the second half, but, I mean, I'll be honest, that was not a very good Mark Sears game on Saturday, especially in the first half, because you could tell that there was a little bit of the, all right, I'm the leader of this team. This is a big moment. Like, I'm going to take my shots, and I want to be, I want to lead the charge. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it was very clear early on that he was not his normal self, and really the entire team was when it came to shooting the basketball. And so that was a little frustrating. The good news, I guess, if you're Alabama, is you did shoot quite poorly, and still you were in the game until the very end. You only turned the ball over 7 times, which was huge. That was going to be something you had to do. I felt like Alabama essentially did everything they needed to win the game outside of making more shots, right? And that's a very important part of basketball, obviously. But I thought there were certainly some positive things you could take away. I also think there were some things that were kind of head scratchers for me, to be honest. Aiden Holloway didn't play as much as I was expecting, and I thought there were times where you clearly needed an offensive spark, and it was kind of odd to me that he was not on the floor as much as he has been really throughout the rest of SEC play. I thought there were times with Phylon where he was doing a really, really good job of, getting the ball to the rim and either being able to make a tough shot or get fouled and go to the free throw line. And it felt like they maybe didn't use him quite as much as they should have. And they were just, felt like Diabate kind of was forcing some shots and just kind of felt, you kind of just got the sense that everybody on the team was like, I need to make a shot, because if I make a shot, maybe that'll get everyone else going. And some of the shot selections you had from Alabama were brutal, and you settled for a lot of really, really difficult twos, a lot of really difficult layups. And again, that's credit to Auburn, right? Because they were playing great defense, and you were making Alabama settle for those shots. But it just felt like there were some times where Alabama was just, they were kind of their own worst enemy with the style of game that they play and just forcing some things, and, left some points and some possessions on the floor on Saturday. But, I mean, at the end of the day, though, you got to give credit to Auburn. They were the better team. They executed, and, like Bruce Pearl said after the game, they played like the number 1 team in the country, and they are the number 1 team in the country. And there's no doubt that Auburn is – there's a gap between Auburn and Duke, Alabama, Florida, Houston, whoever you want to have in that next category. Auburn has definitely separated themselves from the rest of college basketball right now.
Yeah, and to that point, man, I think that for Auburn, you got to feel confident in what you've seen so far, because you think about it, for a period of time, Janai Broome was hurt, and he probably still may not be 100%, but he gives you 19 and 11. And early on, he got hot, and it felt like Auburn needed a point of, all right, Janai, you start this thing on off, and he did. And like you said, to hit a step back three to like early in the ball game, it was like, okay, here we go. We got ourselves a nice little battle. But I think what you got from Denver Jones, what you got from Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford, Chaney Johnson has awakened. Like, he has arrived. And I think it's a pivotal point in the season where you need those role players to step up. And that's exactly what they did in a situation like this. And a lot of credit, like Bruce Pearl said, this is the number 1 team. Like, it is evident that this is probably the best team in college basketball. And it's been I don't think we've ever been in a conversation where Auburn is leading the charge in college basketball, but we're getting it firsthand. And I think that for Alabama, to your point too, it's as poorly as you shot the basketball, to still come away with 85 points. I think Jay Billis brought it up there towards the end of the ball game, and they only made 5 threes the entire night. They lived and died at the free throw line, but to score 85 points, only making 5 threes, that's big. And if you make a couple more of your free throws, there's no telling how that game could have gone. And to be honest, Auburn and a lot of people were telling that they were the most efficient offense in college basketball, and you kind of got a glimpse of that Saturday, because it doesn't matter who has the hot hand, it doesn't matter who has the ball, it just seems to find an open shot. Like, you just end up finding an open shot, and a lot of credit to what Janai Broome was able to do as far as a passer as well, having 6 assists. And I think that the collection of the Miles Kellys, the Denver Joneses, and Channing Johnsons of the world, even Chad Baker-Mazara coming off the bench, Aiden Holloway had a bad foul there on the 3-point shot. He goes and makes all 3 of the free throws. But I think that, for one, Auburn's physicality is going to be a problem for a lot of teams moving forward. And I also think if you can't answer Auburn when they're on a run, it can really, you seem like you start to look like Alabama, where it feels like, oh my gosh, I have to make the shot, because if not, this could be a snowball effect and it starts to trickle down. But I do think, Janai Broome made it a point that he was going to get his. He had shot the ball 16 times, the most on the team, and also that he wasn't taking ill-advised shots. Like, it was, okay, he's being physical down low. The refs were letting some things slide. I do think there's a couple of times where could have been the travel here and there. But I do think the physicality of Auburn on the defensive end, and even on the offensive front, because they attack the offensive glass, they get after you. But I do think that for what Auburn has as a squad, this is a team, if you're not in the Elite Eight, Final Four, national championship picture, you have really fumbled the bag, because I do think collectively, as deep as they are, and the 5 that they have on the floor, Bruce Pearl feels 1,000% confident of who's out there. And I mean, you had multiple guys foul out. Like, you had Dylan Cardwell, your defensive enforcer, he was out the game. Chad Baker-Mazara, late in the game, he fouls out. So to have the foul troubles that you had and still find a way to score 94 points, you got to feel extremely happy if you're an Auburn fan.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, you look at, just the rest of the way for Auburn. I mean, they certainly have difficult games left. Of course, they're going to have to play Alabama again in Neville. But I mean, right now, going on the road and beating Alabama like that, you've got to feel pretty good the rest of the way that, I mean, this is an Auburn team we might not see lose the rest of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like, I thought this was probably the biggest chance for them to lose the rest of the way over here in the regular season. And who knows, maybe Alabama goes and they get a win on the road, and, it's a split on the season. But, if you're telling me that Alabama's going to have to go and shoot better in Neville Arena, I mean, it's certainly possible, but that's going to be a difficult task. And it's just so impressive what Auburn's done now. I mean, you have 14 quad one wins on the season. And again, like, there's just, barring a complete and utter collapse, which would, I just don't see any signs of anything close to that. I mean, Auburn's going to be the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're going to be the favorite to win the SEC tournament, which, as we know, this year is going to be a remarkable accomplishment, whoever does end up winning the conference tournament. And it's, like you said, I mean, I think at this point, and it's so hard in college basketball, because getting to a Final Four is really, it is so difficult to do that. But the more success that Auburn keeps having, I feel like last week we talked about how, even getting to an Elite Eight, you can't really be mad about that. And I'm not saying you can now, but I mean, it really does feel like Final Four or bust for this team.
Yes.
Just because of throughout the regular season, they have made it pretty clear that they are a few feet ahead of the next team behind them in college basketball. And so if that doesn't translate to the tournament, that's going to be rough, because, I mean, yes, you made it to a Final Four back in 2019. That was 6 years ago, and you've been a 1 seed multiple times now based on what's going to happen this year. And we all know, how things went against Yale last year. And, that's what it all matters. Like, this is all great, and Auburn's having a fantastic year. But I think if you're the Auburn fan base, as much as you're enjoying it, you're really focused on March and, all right, this can't be for waste, right? Because you can look back and go, man, that was one of the best teams, or maybe the best team in Auburn basketball history. But at the end of the day, they're going to be remembered for, what they do in March and how far they ultimately make it in the tournament. And, the same thing for Alabama, right? Like, this game is, it's unfortunate. You would have loved to have it. You would be the number 1 team in the country when the AP poll comes out later today. Now you're probably going to be number 3 or number 4. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter when you have the postseason ahead of you and what you do in March Madness and the pursuit of a repeat trip to the Final Four. That's ultimately how both of these teams are going to be remembered in the future. So a lot left to go for them. But again, if you're Alabama, you're kind of kicking yourself because if you had just shot 30% from three, the math would have made, it would have been 94-94, right?
Yep.
It would have been neck and neck. And, maybe one of those free throws, goes in for one side or doesn't go in for the other side down the stretch like that. And, you have a different outcome, but ultimately that's not the case. And Auburn was the better team. And now you got Arkansas coming in, an Arkansas team that almost took out Texas A&M over the weekend.
Should have.
And they should have, yeah. And Texas A&M had to go on a run there late in that game to get the win. But that's a hungry team, and that's a team that we've seen play. We saw them, what they did against Alabama in that comeback recently. Knocking off Kentucky. That's a solid team, and you can't overlook them. And if you're Alabama, this is you got 6 more games, and they're all against ranked teams, and you're about to have to go on the road and take on a Missouri team that just whooped up on Georgia over the weekend.
Yep.
And you cannot let this game turn into 2 losses. And that's going to be the big concern. I think what Nate Oates and his staff are going to be preaching here before that game on Wednesday. But look, for what it was and what we hyped it up to be,
It was a hell of a ball
I
game.
was happy. I was satisfied. It wasn't a blowout one way or the other. It looked like it might get that way for a little bit in the second half, but overall, I think for the most hyped up regular season game in SEC history, I think it certainly lived up to the hype.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls on the other side. Reaction to the banger and the hanger as Auburn knocks off Alabama 94-85. You're an Auburn fan. How you feeling right now? Even if you're an Alabama fan, how you feeling? Because it's going to be a fun ride as we finish up the NCAA regular season, especially here in the SEC. We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked right here on JOX 94.5. 621 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. And you as well, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, your reaction to the banger and the hanger. The old Bama Barner Classic. I guess since Auburn won, it should be the Barner Bama Classic, right? And isn't that how the rivalry names go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so yeah. However you want to call it, the IBOB, it doesn't matter. Auburn knocks off Alabama 94-85. Getting some reaction here on the JOX text line. As always, it's open for you, 205-834-9450. Dave texts in. He says, I came away from the game feeling that Auburn is not head and shoulders better than Alabama. Nah, there's a gap.
I mean, Alabama kept it competitive. I'm talking, when I say that, I mean, looking at their resume and you're comparing that when it comes to NCAA tournament time. No, I certainly think that, as I said earlier, I think if you're Alabama, again, there's no moral victories, and you played pretty poorly at times on Saturday, but you shot the ball. I mean, let's be honest, you shot the ball like crap, and you still were competitive in this game and had multiple opportunities to go and take a lead. And there were certainly opportunities for Alabama to win that game on Saturday. So in that regard, yes, I do think that Alabama and Auburn, if they play again, I would expect it to be a similar style game, right? I don't think that Alabama is significantly worse than Auburn. It's just when you look at the resume that Auburn has, again, they have 14 quad one wins. They just beat the number 2 team. I mean, their only losses to Duke and to Florida. Like, you have 2 losses to top 5 teams in the country, essentially. It's hard to fault somebody for that. So, no, I'm not saying that in the sense that I don't think anybody can compete with Auburn on a basketball court. It's just when you look at their resumes and how teams are going to be compared come NCAA tournament time. I mean, I think Auburn could lose. I mean, heck, Auburn could lose 2 or 3 games, in my opinion, here down the stretch and still be the number 1 overall seed because that's how good their resume is.
Absolutely. Somebody texted and said, y'all sound sad this morning. I was like, I don't think so. I'm not.
You hear what you want to hear, I guess.
Yeah, right. I feel like all we did was just kind of break the game down. Alabama shot the ball piss poor. Auburn built the ass. Like, that's the only way. That's literally the only.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that came away with it. I think that, I mean, for Alabama, I mean, you're probably thinking, well, we're not going to shoot that bad again. That's just a style in which you play. Like, think about it, the stark contrast from the game you just saw on Tuesday against Texas, where any shot you put up, it felt like it went in. Then you flip around to Auburn, and it's like every shot you shot was on the opposite end. And also, a lot of credit to Auburn's defense. They were being extremely physical. And they were making Alabama to take tough shots. And even when they had contested shots, they didn't go in. And even when you found yourself open, they still didn't go in. So I just think it was a bad shooting game, and Auburn took advantage of that. And also, Auburn from the jump was the better team. Like, from the time the ball tipped off and they got the first, it was 10-0 to start the game. It's okay. Well, Alabama's going to have to chase for the rest of the way. And they did. They got a chance to tie it up late in the ball game. But then you get to Hot Pedford, it comes down. I'm talking about as soon as the inbound comes in, hits a 3, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. So I think that for the entire realm of the game, it felt as though Alabama was still trying to claw back in it just to like maintain it, where Auburn felt that we're the better team. We're showing you that we're the better team on top of being more physical. And they came away with a 9-point victory. And again, to Conrad's point, had you made a few more shots, there's no telling how the game could have gone, but it wasn't like you forced Auburn into anything that was uncomfortable, to say the least. It was they found open shots. They were working it down inside the paint, and the role players, they elevated and stepped up their game alongside Janai Broome. And when you have the best player on the floor and he's getting hot, it makes everything else for those other guys a little bit easier. It's like, oh, well, all I got to do, and like, think about it like the screen and roll action. I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a basketball just savant, but it felt as though anytime Auburn got in a pick and roll situation, the length of Chaney Johnson was a disadvantage for everybody that they ended up switching up on him. Like, I think athletically, probably the only person that could have stifled him just a little bit was Mo Diabate. And he was kind of caught up in the island when it's like, okay, well, if we have to swap this, there's about to be a guard on Jamie Johnson. All he has to do is use his length and his body, and he's gotten to the rim. And that's kind of what they started to picking apart there towards the end of the ball game.
Yeah, and I thought another thing that Auburn did really well, and admittedly, it's a little concerning from the Alabama standpoint of how did you not pick up on this? How did you not adjust to this? Because it's not anything that you haven't seen hundreds of times before on a basketball court, but the amount of ball screens that Auburn would use that to free guys up and get open looks, or at least lightly contested looks. And credit to Auburn again, like their guys were hitting those shots. But the amount of times that you would have a ball screen somewhere near the top of the key and Alabama defensively would just look like they had never seen that before, and somebody wouldn't close out on a 3 attempt or what have you. And again, you give credit to Auburn for making those shots and making those plays, but that's one of those things you look at and you're like, man, this is like kind of basketball 101, just communicating, switching, getting around screens, things like that. And Alabama, they struggled with that on Saturday. But again, I mean, you give credit to Auburn. They found something and it worked, and Alabama didn't make the necessary adjustments and they were able to exploit it. And that's, that's good coaching right there. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you can take away from this game. There's a lot of things from both sides. Like, again, I don't want to sit here and just play the what if game of, oh, well, if Alabama shot 40% from three like Auburn, then they would have won by 9 points. Like, okay, they would, but they didn't hit those shots and they had opportunities to, and they just didn't do it. So, no, I mean, all the credit in the world. It was a great win for Auburn. And, if you're Alabama, you just look at it and go, all right, we did some things really well. We did some things really poorly. And if we want to beat a team of Auburn's caliber, whether it's at the end of the regular season, in the SEC tournament, or in the NCAA tournament, you're going to have to make those shots and play better all around.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's hear from John in T-Town, who wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's going on, John?
Good morning, fellas. Watching the game, had a chance to be there. Wasn't quite as loud as it was last year at the game, but I think that had to do with the fact Auburn jumped out. Defensively, one thing I noticed that they did that they haven't done all season, like they switched everything, off-ball screens, on-ball screens, backdoor screens, everything switched. It's the first time I've seen Auburn do that all year instead of trying to stay with their man. And I think that's what gave Mark Sears the most problem, especially early in the first half, is when they were switched. He's trying to switch on them. They've got a big switching on him, but Dylan Cardwell moves well enough. He can stick with 1 through 5. And I think that really got him in some bad shots. The 5 threes that they hit was where Auburn overcommitted, and they were wide open threes. Offensively, where Auburn got in trouble at times, you'd see it was funny. The first run that Alabama came back after they went up 9-0, you seen Denver Jones come up. As soon as he comes down, jacks up a quick 3. Bruce pulls him out, puts in Pettiford. Next play down, Pettiford does the same thing. He pulls him out, throws Jones back in. And then other times when Alabama get close, it looked like Janai was trying to do too much and shouldered himself. But then that's when Bruce Pearl did his Phil Jackson impression, because you would hear him yell out, Janai, and instantly the ball starts going through Janai. He's moved people around. You're not trying to go up under the screen. He's giving it to Jones or Miles, and they're jacking that top 3 up. And when you did play it right, you'd see a back off-ball screen and see Chaney Johnson kind of get out in the mid-range, and Janai would pass it down to him, or Dylan would pass it down to him, and you just can't cut. There's just too many options. But that's what I feel. It was funny. I was almost Jackson out there. As soon as they start messing up, getting close, you hear Bruce, Janai, and he's instantly taking the ball. I think if Auburn runs every play through him, either at the top or low post, he's so good, you've got to give him so much attention. There's no way to stop him. They've just got too many options. Hang on, listen, y'all have a great show.
Hey, man, John, we appreciate you, buddy. And, he hit the nail right on the head. It just felt like it was Janai Broom's game. Like, it just felt as though everything that they needed to do started with number 4. And I think that, and getting in situations like that, when you got like the screen and roll game and everything like that, I think that, one, he showed you like he's got a bag. Like, he can go out there. He's confident enough from the 3 that you have to honor it. And then if he has to put it on the floor, he's still athletic enough to get around you. He's left-handed, which still kind of throws a lot of people off. And I mean, he hit a nice reverse right there on the elbow. He hit like a nice reverse jump shot, and it's like, okay, well, what can you do defensively to stop that?
Yeah, I mean, some of the shots he made were certainly tough shots, but yeah, some of the like mid-range fadeaways he would have and just the touch on his shots that, you don't traditionally see from big men. Yeah, I was super impressed by that. And then even, late in the game where it looked like he kind of tweaked his ankle again and he was a little banged up and it felt like, that's when Alabama started to go on one of their runs and you're like, all right, maybe this is the opportunity. Like, obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt, but you're sitting there and you're like, all right, like if he's not going to be able to move, like, that's going to open some things up for Alabama. And if Auburn has to start going, through a different guy offensively, this is kind of your time to strike. But, outside of a couple of minutes where he was kind of hobbling around, he stayed in that. He was not coming out of that basketball game. I'll tell you that much. But no, he was impressive. He was the best player on the floor on Saturday, and that was a big part of why Auburn won. Because again, I mean, you went into the game and you knew, all right, some guys are going to have to step up. Who are the role players going to be? Essentially, everybody stepped up for Auburn, but you knew at the end of the day that probably whoever won, either Mark Sears was going to lead the way for Alabama or Janai was going to have to do it for Auburn. And Mark Sears, I know he finished with 18 points, but Mark Sears did not play a very good game on Saturday, in my opinion. Janai Broome played a very good game.
Absolutely.
And we saw which side won the game. So
absolutely. 205-834-9450. We'll continue with your text message, your calls on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5.
6:36, welcome back into the Monday edition, the President's Day edition of Morning JOX. We will be live all day long here for your President's Day holiday. Of course, McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up at 7 o'clock with Damian, Greg, Cole, and Saber. I'll be back from 10 to 2 for three-man front alongside Pat Smith, Landrum Roberts, and Molly Robinson. And then, of course, the Paul Feinbaum Show comes your way from 2 to 6 every weekday here on three-man front. Before we get back to your phone calls, your texts about what happened in the IBOB, Auburn getting a 94-85 win over Alabama there in the banger in the hanger, as we call it here on Morning JOX. But the good news kept rolling in for Auburn basketball over the weekend. If you missed this because you were celebrating the victory, well, it's a good sign for things to come down there on the plains for Bruce Pearl. As over the weekend, Auburn landed a commitment from the top JUCO player in college basketball. He goes to Casper College in Wyoming. His name is Abdul Bashir. He is averaging over 25 points a game this year in JUCO. He's shooting 37% from three. He's averaging 10 threes per game, or 10 attempts, 10 attempted threes per game. So yeah, I saw some highlights of this kid that were going around social media yesterday, and he's long and he can shoot the cover off of a basketball.
Okay.
So that's certainly going to be a big addition for Auburn. He was looking at some other places. Texas A&M seemed to be one of the front runners, at least in the SEC, for his services. But Abdul Bashir, the top JUCO player, has committed to Auburn, and so yeah, looks like they're just going to reload and be ready to go back at it next year. So good news for Auburn as they get a big win over their rival and get a signing from the number one JUCO player. So pretty good weekend for Bruce Pearl and the Tigers.
Hey, they cooking over there. They cooking up something good over there in East Alabama. War Dam Eagle. Let's go to War Dam Don on the phone lines this morning. What's going on, Don?
What's up, my brothers? How y'all doing?
First off, calm down. We heard what you said Friday, that you didn't feel confident. You just picked Auburn to win the ball game because you're an Auburn fan, but you didn't feel confident about the game.
Now, I did
We
pick
got the
Auburn
quote.
to win, Damian, and I just said I didn't have 100% confidence.
There we go.
And I said I wasn't overly confident.
Exactly. No, yeah, you're right. We got the tape.
But Conrad, buddy, I want to compliment you, man. You're doing a great job this morning, man, and the people that I don't know what that guy was saying to y'all about y'all being sad. Y'all are doing a great job. Great show so far, fellas.
Appreciate it, Don. It's just
somebody
wants us to be sad so they can call us Alabama fans.
No. Well, I mean, you're Crimson Conrad, my friend. Hey, I got no problem with that, buddy. Hey, cheer for your team and be proud of your university you went to, brother.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, I do have something to ask y'all. When y'all made the big run to tie the game at 65, do you think that took a little steam out of you?
Yeah, it felt like, because there were a couple of times, and I mean, that was the moment, I guess, just because it was later in the game, where it really felt like, to me, because I believe sandwiched in there, that was when Janai kind of retweaked his ankle as well, and it really just felt like all the momentum had shifted towards Alabama. But like you're saying, Don, there were a couple of times, they had a similar run in the first half where,
yeah, they did.
Alabama was able to get on these runs and they made it a 1-point game a couple of times. It was a 3-point game a couple other times.
Mm-hmm.
And once they got to that point, like you said, it's like they lost all their gas. Like they used all of their energy to get back into the game and make it a one-possession game. And credit to Auburn, once those situations hit, Alabama wasn't able to make shots, and Auburn, it felt like, was always able to make a shot to kind of increase that lead and give them a little more breathing room. Because I thought the same thing though. Don was Alabama was able to make those runs to get it to one possession, and then they were gassed for a few minutes after that.
Well, I compliment your crowd. Your crowd was a great crowd. But I got did y'all see the play where Missouri went into the crowd in the and I don't mean to be ugly, but the husband of the lady pushed him. And boy, and then Missouri said something. But boy, she went at him. Did y'all see that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was not happy. Yep.
Well, I found out who she is.
Yep.
And you guys are too young to remember this. But that's Hall Thompson, the founder of Shoal Creek and the owner of Thompson Tractors, granddaughter.
Yep, I saw that.
Everything, and she got hammered yesterday on Facebook. I know I know it's all Auburn fans hammering her and everything, but hey, she's a feisty thing, wasn't she?
Yeah, she wasn't too happy, but and I know you sent me this over the weekend, Don, but I do have to say I thought it was pretty cool the way that the Auburn players seemed to embrace Aiden Holloway and kind of
Yes, they did.
the camaraderie
Yes,
that they
did.
had, and I'm sure there were some jokes and things made amongst
Yeah,
them
no,
as well,
look.
but y'all, it seemed like a very classy move by the Auburn players.
Well, I tell you what, Conrad, last year when he was on our team and everything, I think Janai Broom and Mazzara took him under the wings and everything, and Mazzara even messed with him in the hour before the game when they're out there, warming up.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep.
So once you're part of the Auburn family, you never leave. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and guys, I got nothing against the kid. I wish him well. Okay, but I think it's better off for him, and I don't think he was a fit for Pearl's offense. But I'm gonna tell you the unsung hero that nobody ever gives enough credit to, Denver Jones, is probably one of the best guard defenders there is in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, it's back-to-back years. It's back-to-back years. We've had the same conversation about Denver Jones of like right when Auburn needs him, boom, he's there.
Oh, I tell you what, hey, and Conrad, buddy, and I think you said this, and Damien too. We just got a 10-player deep team. Okay, it's not all about Broom. I mean, it's the whole team.
Yeah, absolutely. So why weren't you that confident going into the game Friday then?
Because I thought Alabama would shoot the lights out of the ball with 3, and I thought Pearl and his son's actually like the defensive coordinator, and Bergmeister's like the offensive coordinator. But a great defensive plan of guarding the 3-point line. I was worried about Alabama being hot from the 3.
I got you. It's fair. It's fair.
Okay, well, guys, thank y'all, and it's going to be a great day at Social Taco. And Damien, if you can make it, all the beers are on me, brother.
Let's go to Larry on the phone lines. Let's keep it going. What's going on this morning, Larry?
Glad to see spirits are high.
Hey, gentlemen, enjoy the show always. I'm not much of the connoisseur of basketball. I like to watch it. Football is more. I'm obviously rocking and rolling with my Crimson Tide. But in my eyes, guys, tell me if you think this is true or not. Everything looked easy for Auburn in that game. Was that obvious to you?
I mean, I thought, honestly, I know you look at the scoreboard and see 94 points, and it's hard to say that you played well defensively, but I thought at times Alabama actually played pretty well defensively, and a lot of it I chalk up to Auburn was making tough shots.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about it in general from the beginning all the way to the end. It seemed like every time that Bama would come across the half-court line, the Bama's perimeter, they were under pressure consistently, regardless of how many different plays they ran behind the three-point line. They were always beyond guarded. And everything the additional pass that Auburn made, they had somebody open off the wing or even over beyond the arc, and boom, they were just hitting shots. But the way they played defense all game was really impressive. And, hey, I just want to give you win with class, you lose with class. Auburn deserved to win that game. They got up to, 9 or 10 to nothing early in the game, and it seemed like the pressure didn't even phase them. But I give them all the credit in the world. And, hey, one other question, guys. I had to get away from the game for a little while, but somebody said that there was a plastic bottle thrown on the floor or something like that. Oh, Nate Oates said something about it. What happened there?
I don't remember.
I think it was it might have been during a break, but I had seen it that Nate Oates had announced to the crowd like, "Hey, man, we're classier than this. Like, don't throw stuff on the ball, don't throw stuff on the court, because we got a game to win. We got a game to try to win. So like, let's not make it about us."
They obviously going to play that last game? Is that on a weekend, a Saturday game, guys? I don't know. I know it's down in Auburn, but and then you got the SEC tournament, and it's going to be a heck of a big. I mean, the big dance, all the different teams and all the teams of the SEC that have got so much experience this year. It's going to be amazing.
It's a Saturday game. It's on the 8th. It's on March the 8th.
Right. Yep, 1 p.m. tip on ESPN.
Guys.
Absolutely, brother.
Appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. We appreciate you, Larry, as well. We'll see you on the phone lines as well. See you on the Jocks text line. We'll keep going as we wrap up here on Morning Jocks. Keep it locked right here on Jocks 94.5. 6:50 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order with you for a few more minutes as we pass you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Then on a three-man front, and after that, the Paul Feinbaum show. So you want to keep it locked here on JOX 94.5. Continue to get your reaction on the banger and the hanger. Auburn knocks off Alabama 94-85. Some text messages coming in. Somebody texting in and says, I'm curious to know, do basketball players at places like Duke or Kentucky attend the game day shows at their home games? I saw that Bama players were courtside at game day. Not sure if that hype is good to take part in just hours before playing. That's just for the fans. I don't think it necessarily throws you off. Maybe they just wanted to see what College Game Day was doing.
Didn't the Auburn players do that when they had game day?
I think so.
A couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
I mean,
shoot.
Well, and let's be honest, right? This is not something that happens all the time at Alabama and Auburn, and so you probably kind of want to take. I mean, I don't know. I guess to each their own. If you don't think that's good for the players, that's fine. But I think it's more of a, hey, this is an atmosphere that we don't get to see a whole lot, so we want to take it in.
Yeah, I mean,
let's be honest. If they're not there at game day, they're probably, in their apartment playing Fortnite or something or whatever. I don't think they're doing that instead of getting shots up in the practice facility.
Yeah, right.
In that sense, they'd probably just be chilling.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on the phone lines. Let's go to Sam, who wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's going on, Sam?
Hey, brothers. How y'all doing this morning?
Man, no complaints on this Monday morning, man.
Well, man, first of all, let me give heads up to Auburn. Good game plan. Definitely a game that Alabama should have won. But there's 5 things that helped Bama lose that game. Number one, the drop coverage defense that they play is made for a team who's not a good outside shooter. It's another type of defense when you're trying to keep people out of the lane. Number two, the physicality that Bama plays with, even though they are tough three-point and to the lane shooters, defensively, they don't want to touch anybody. Auburn beat them up just like their game was with Tennessee. And once team figure out that Bama don't want to be touched, everybody, even we find difficult to help them. Ball move. You're tough. If they go back to playing solid defense, moving the ball, getting rid of the drop coverage, and figuring out, are they really, really want to be a team that's going to be considered one of the top teams in the nation? That's my take, brother.
Hey, man, we appreciate you, Sam. Brought us great points. I think that a lot of it, too, to me, was just like some of your shots weren't falling. And Auburn made it difficult for Alabama to find good looks. And even when they found good looks, still weren't making them. And yet they still scored 85 points. So I get it as far as I think Auburn's physicality on both ends did play a part into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just goes to how good they were defensively. That, like you said, there were a lot of times where, Alabama would have the ball at the top of the key, and you could tell somebody was looking to find an open three. Mm-hmm. It wasn't happening, and then they were having to settle for a tough two. But I did think from a physicality standpoint, I actually thought Alabama looked pretty good because, especially in the second half, once they realized that it just wasn't going to be their day shooting from the outside, they were attacking the rim.
Yep.
And I thought that was a very good game plan for Alabama. It probably should have hit a few more free throws, but they certainly made it known, we're going to attack the basket, and they got theirs. It's just you needed some of the outside shooting to go along with it.
Oh, yeah. Should be a fun one, man. Just continue to get your reaction here on JOX 94.5 as Auburn knocks off Alabama 94-85. Keep it locked right here. McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Those guys are next.